everybody, JC here with another T&I toy review, and today we're going to take a look at the new DC Collectibles DC Comics Supervillains Power Ring figure, which is part of the Crime Syndicate. In fact, this is the final figure in the Crime Syndicate assortment that we're taking a look at. We looked at Ultraman and Superwoman the previous 2 days, and then last month we took a look at the other three in the assortment: Johnny Quick, Owlman, and Deathstorm. So, as I said, today we're going to look at Power Ring, and Power Ring comes in your standard DC Collectibles type window box packaging. You've got the Crime Syndicate logo up in the top right corner, DC Comics Supervillains logo underneath that. Then the figure is clearly displayed in the window box packaging, so you can see what you're getting. The colors on this particular figure for the packaging are black and a dark kind of green to match the character, and then you've got the name of the character down below, Power Ring. On the one side you have the darkened in image of the character, and then on the other we have a picture of the figure, once again telling us the figure stands at 6.75 inches tall and that this figure is sculpted by Gentle Giant Studios. Then on the back we have a picture of all the figures in the Crime Syndicate wave, brief bio of Power Ring and the Forever Evil storyline, and then a little thumbnail image of Power Ring up at the top. Okay, so let's get the figure open and take a look at what's inside. So here's a look at the Power Ring figure outside of the packaging. This figure comes with one accessory, his Power Ring battery, which looks like a grotesque type monster. Even has a articulated jaw on it, which is kind of cool. And then in his mouth you can see like the ring battery. It's like a clear piece of plastic inside his mouth. And there's some nice detailing sculpting on the battery itself. I don't actually recall really seeing this in the comic. I'm sure, you know, it probably appeared maybe once or something and I just forgot it, but very kind of grotesque looking power battery that he comes with. The figure itself has, for the most part, some pretty nice detailing. I've got a few paint blemishes on my figure, which I'll go over in just a moment. But you can see he has, one thing I don't really like is that they've sculpted the hand with his ring on completely open, so it's hard to kind of get him into shots where he's kind of like, where it looks like he's firing his a ray out of his ring or something. Now I know in a lot of the story with him, you know, he basically, his ring, he's like afraid of his ring, and his ring, I don't know if it's like in his head or something, but he thinks his ring is hurting him, and so he's like always constantly wanting the ring to come off. He can't get it off. You know, he tries to get Deathstorm to remove it for him, but Deathstorm won't. And so he's kind of like always holding his hand out and like he's in pain and something. So I kind of get why they gave this pose, but at the same time, like I said, it just kind of makes it hard to get him into some cool poses where he's like actually using the ring. Now he's got like these green fluorescent veins all over his hand and up his arm and even on his face, which is pretty cool looking. And the ring, you know, it stands out nicely on his finger, so you can clearly see the ring. Now one thing I want to point out as far as a paint blemish, you'll notice the hand has a hinge joint, and at least on my figure, the hinge is, I don't know if the white, you know, because his gloves are a pearl white color, so, but the hinge on his hand there is not. I don't know if the paint scraped off or what have you, but so when you bend his hand in certain positions, you can definitely see that joint stick out because it's a different color than the rest of the glove. And it's not that way on his other hand, so I think the paint just scraped off on that one hand. Costume is all of a dark green. Now another blemish on my figure, and I don't know how well it'll show up, it's not major, but on his back here there seems to be some kind of, like where the paint's rubbed rubbed off, so just another little blemish on my figure. But other than that, the figure's pretty solid paint-wise. He's got some washes in his hair to give it some added texture, but not a whole lot in the way of washes otherwise on the figure. The boots are that same kind of pearl white paint as the gloves, and then the costume again is just kind of a metallic dark green. And you can see like the veins on his chest are sculpted on his chest, kind of sticking through his costume, which is cool. Scale wise, the figure does come in at around 6.75 inches tall. He's about the same height as the new 52 Green Lantern figure. And again, if you're not familiar with these Crime Syndicate figures, they're basically evil counterparts of the Justice League, with Power Ring being the evil counterpart for Green Lantern. As I mentioned before, the hands on this figure are sculpted open. The Power Ring hand is sculpted completely open. You can't really hold anything in that hand. It's just kind of posed so you can kind of like, you can hold the one hand, you can hold the Power Ring hand in the other hand, so you can kind of go around like he's complaining that his hand hurts or something. But otherwise, there's not a lot you can do with that hand. The other hand is also sculpted open, but they've done it so that he can hold his power battery accessory. And he holds it pretty well. When you first try and put it in his hand, you may have to pry the fingers open a little bit, but once you get it in there, then it fits in nicely. Articulation on this figure is pretty much on par with what we've seen with the other figures in the Crime Syndicate assortment. His head is on a ball joint. He does have a little up and down movement, but not a whole lot. But he can turn his head left and right, and he can kind of pivot it to the sides. So he's got pretty good movement there. Now, one thing I do want to note as far as another paint blemish, some of the paint on his neck, when you turn his head or lift his head up, you can see it's kind of rubbed off the skin color. You can see some green coming through, so that's just something. It's not really noticeable because usually his face is blocking it. You can't see his neck because of when the head is down, but sometimes if you like turned it or put it up high, you'll notice that. So just something to be wary of. The arms are attached with standard ball hinge joints at the shoulder. He can get his arm all the way out. He's got good rotation at the arm. He's got the bicep swivel. He's got the single jointed elbows. He can bend his elbow pretty good. And then he has the hinge joints at the wrists, and they can swivel. Now, as I mentioned before, on mine the paint is kind of rubbing off on the actual hinge on the wrists. I just noticed on the other hand, I showed you the Power Ring hand, and on this hand it looks like it's also rubbed off on the bottom part of the hinge. So, again, that's just something to be wary of. He's got the ab crunch. He's got good ab crunch, so he can crunch down and he can crunch back. He's got the swivel at the waist. So he's got his legs are attached with ball joints, so he can do the splits good. He's got the thigh swivel. He's got double jointed knees, so he can bend his knees good. And then he's got the ankle pivot, so he can do up, down, and left and right. And then the feet have one peg hole. Okay, so that's my review. Other than a few paint blemishes and the fact that I would have probably rather had seen that they sculpted his Power Ring hand as closed-fisted, I think this is a pretty good figure. Lots of good articulation, and I think it does a good job of capturing the overall look and feel of the Power Ring character. If you've been reading the Forever Evil storyline, you know Power Ring's kind of a best word I could use to describe him, a wuss. He's always complaining about his ring hurting him, and he's kind of afraid of his own powers. And in fact, his fate, in that story is not so good. But I think they've done a good job of capturing that look and feel of the Power Ring character. So, and definitely if you've been collecting the Crime Syndicate wave, you want to pick this one up to round out your team. So that's my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment, if you like the review. Let us know what you think. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And until next time, I'll catch you later.